Breaking news: in the run-up to the election, Putin faces a number of economic obstacles, but they are all manageable. As President Vladimir Putin gets ready to run for re-election, the Russian economy is showing signs of life, thanks in part to the country's ability to sidestep a Western oil price cap. This is happening despite the challenges posed by labor shortages, inflation, and high interest rates. March 17th will be the official date of Russia's presidential election next year, according to the country's parliament. Many anticipate that Putin will seek re-election for a second 6-year term after he predicted 3.5% economic growth on Thursday. Those who opposed Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 aimed to punish and isolate Putin's Russia, but Russia's export-focused $2.2 trillion economy has weathered the sanctions wave better than Moscow or the West expected. Most importantly, the West has failed miserably in its attempts to limit oil exports from Russia. To get around the Western world's oil price cap, Russia has shifted its exports to countries like China and India and used mysterious shadow fleets of ships whose ownership is hard to pin down. The amount of money Russia's budget received from energy sales increased from 425.5 billion rubles in January to 961.7 billion rubles, $10.41 billion. In November, the recovery of oil revenues has put Putin's domestic labor shortage in the spotlight. This shortage has been worsened by the mobilization of the military last year and the exodus of hundreds of thousands of people since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Voters are understandably worried that other economic concerns, like the depreciating ruble, high inflation, and interest rates, will reduce their purchasing power. Moscow is directing budgetary resources toward the defense sector through increased military production, while unemployment is at a record low of 2.9%. As a result, other sectors, such as IT, are facing staff shortages, which is reducing productivity. According to Maxim Orshkin, Putin's economic advisor, Russia requires a larger pool of highly qualified engineers, managers, and workers if it wants to achieve the level of technological sovereignty it seeks in its manufacturing sectors. This was stated in November. For people to come here more willingly, we need attractive salaries, said Orshkin. According to Orshkin, the economy as a whole needs to start working on migrating to Russian technology platforms, but the pressure from the West will only get worse. According to ACRA Director Dmitry Kulikov, workforce capacity has hit record highs. This means that economic growth will be constrained on the supply side, as a result of which annual GDP growth rates will fall from around 3% in 2023 to closer to the potential 1 to 2%, said Kulikov. Wages are going up for a number of reasons, including large increases in the industrial sector and the military, financial aid for families hit hard by the mobilization and war, and other government programs. Many families will have to cut back on spending, particularly on imported goods, as real incomes are expected to rebound sharply this year after contracting in 2022. However, this recovery will be uneven across sectors and regions. The key question, according to Liam Peach, senior emerging markets economist at Capital Economics, will be how Russia's economy deals with overheating as it recovers from a 2.1% contraction in 2022. Peach predicted that growth would be curbed by supply-side constraints. Households have experienced a big rise in their incomes, but I don't think it's sustainable, Peach said. Higher inflation means a bigger squeeze on household incomes ahead of the election. How high is inflation? The responsibility of limiting inflation falls on the central bank. Already compelled to tighten monetary policy by 750 basis points since July, the bank is widely anticipated to hike rates again, this time to 16%, on December 15th. Inflation this year is projected at approximately 7.5%, which is still significantly higher than the bank's 4% target and follows 2022's double-digit inflation, Peach stated. It's plausible that inflation gets as high as 10% next year because the economy is growing quickly, citing labor market tensions and unfounded consumer inflation expectations. With a population that has grown used to frequent price increases, however unpleasant, the inflation situation is ultimately manageable for the time being. Senior fellow Alina Rybakova of the Peterson Institute for International Economics and the Kiev School of Economics, KSE, said that the central bank will talk cautiously about inflation. She went on to say that an unchecked depreciation of the ruble increased fiscal pressure and a lag on the part of the central bank. would be necessary for a serious inflation spiral to develop. They're nowhere near that, they're just not feeling the pressure, said Rybakova. The ruble's fall this year past 100 to the dollar prompted authorities to react with capital controls and rate hikes, and there is always a risk of sharp volatility. On Thursday, it was trading at 92.76. While a weak ruble helps the Russian government's coffers through exports of foreign currency, it raises the cost of imports, encourages inflation, and threatens capital flight to affordable oil prices. Even though oil prices hit 5-month lows this week, they are still much higher than what Russia needs for fiscal security. Oil is the lifeblood of the Russian economy. Russian energy revenues are soaring as a result of a conglomeration of factors, including a string of production cuts by OPEC Plus nations and the extensive avoidance of the West's price cap. In their November review, KSE Institute pointed out that the $60 per BBL cap in the West is facing growing pressure. In October, more than 99% of seaborne exports of Russian crude oil appear to have been sold above $60 per barrel. At the beginning of the year, Russia's budget deficit was severely impacted by Western sanctions meant to reduce Moscow's main source of funding. However, Moscow now anticipates a deficit of approximately 1% of GDP. If the oil price stays at the current level, it is extraordinarily comfortable for Russia. Rybakova stated. 92.3955 rubles is the value of $1, Reuters reported from Moscow. Alexander Marrow from London and Elaine Hardcastle edited the final product.